Welcome everyone to Figuring Out Fabric, where I ask dumb questions and you get smart answers. And we've got someone local, one of my favorite people, Stephanie Bruno. She's been working with Power BI before it was Power BI. I remember Microsoft would be like, we're desperate to have anyone demo this product. And she spearheaded using it at EggPath before and got to go up on, I think, did you go up on stage or did they just demo your stuff? I don't remember.
They just demoed, yeah,
They just
but they
demoed,
went and they made a whole video, yeah, it was
yeah,
great.
yeah. And then you were a Microsoft MVP, and then you were a Microsoft employee, and then you were a Microsoft MVP again. And so, and you've been really helpful here in the local community. So you and I co-ran the Pittsburgh Power BI user group. You helped bring back SQL Saturday Pittsburgh from the dead.
Go
So
us.
really delighted to have you on and talk about Semantic Link. So I think it'll be fun.
Thanks, Eugene, good to be here.
Yeah. So do you want to give people kind of the elevator pitch? Because I know for me, I keep hearing people rave about Semantic Link, but I'm not at the point yet where I can spell Spark. And so I haven't tried it. But I mean, people seem really, really excited about it. So what is Semantic Link? What is Semantic Link Labs?
Yeah, and I'm with you, I also can hardly spell Spark, so I'm
Yeah, yeah,
totally new
right.
to this, right? So, Power BI and SQL background, not a Python background, but don't
Exactly.
let that stop you because there are so many helpful resources, especially on GitHub. We'll get into that, but, um yeah, you don't have to know how to write it to use it because there are so many sample notebooks that you can use. And then that's how I've been learning it. It's just
Sure.
kind of looking at what's out there, looking at those sample notebooks, just like learning anything, any kind of coding, right? It just is so much easier if you're looking at something somebody else has already done. Okay, but what is semantic link, you asked, right? Okay, so it is a Python library that now comes pre-installed with Fabric. So you
Oh,
can just,
interesting. Okay.
yeah, you can open up a new notebook in Fabric and Semantic Link is already installed. You don't need to do the pip install. You used to have to do that, but no longer. Um, so this is all built in and it really allows you to do, I mean, a lot of things in Python that you would want to do with a semantic model. There are other features too, but this is kind of the first one. This is like the entry point. So I always think about how in the past, I would build my wonderful work of art semantic model,
Right.
aka data set. But I could only access that data including the measures, like, through Excel or through a Power BI report. So I could do analyze in
Right.
Excel. So if I wanted that measure logic, right, I needed to use analyze in Excel. I could use DAX Studio, I could write queries, but that was really it. With Semantic Link, though, you can query your model with Python as well. So for those of us like you and me that's not all that exciting because we don't know
Hmm.
how to do it. It doesn't. It kind of is like, well, so what? But a good example to me is that you've put a whole bunch of work into creating logic for some super important measure, and
Oh,
it's
God. Yes.
complicated logic, right? And then you've got your data scientist who needs to do something, some prediction or something, maybe on that measure. So
Yeah.
pre-semantic link, they would have had to rebuild the logic in Python for the measure. But with semantic link, they can just simply query it, not with DAX even. It's not even DAX, it's just Python and get the output of the measure. So it kind of
Yeah.
unlocks your semantic model so you can um, use it through with more tools besides Power BI, Excel, Deck Studio.
Yeah. That's interesting because it brings up two things to mind. So the first is, you know, I agree, like, on some level, it isn't too exciting for us because we can just run DAX Studio, but if you've ever been asked how to automate something with Power BI, it's just a nightmare. Like, you're not gonna 'cause every once in a while, you'll see someone be like, "Oh, how do I saw this recently, someone's like, "Well, how do I get Power BI Desktop to refresh on open or refresh automatically?" And it's like, "That no?" Like, maybe there's some sort of hack where, like, some batch script to open it up, and then you find the port for SQL Server analysis services and run something or whatever, but, like, the idea of just automating any of that, the support isn't there. Um, and the business logic piece is interesting because I think people underestimate that because the larger the organization or the more regulated the reporting, the more steps to get the data and the data model approved. Like if you're dealing with anything that's in a regulated industry, you're dealing with financials, like you don't want some data science to try and reproduce gross sales by from scratch because I mean, you know this, but at first it seems easy. It's just, oh, sales times quantity. But every business is like this fractal snowflake of edge conditions. And you find out that if the moon's waxing gibbous on the third Thursday over Africa, then we give them 10% off. And
Right.
you don't want to have to try and reproduce that. So that I mean, that's exciting. That makes sense.
Yeah, and then you also said automation, and that's another thing that
Yeah.
Semantic Link can help with for sure. Another one that I like, it can query the metadata too. So not just the data in the model, but the metadata. So it like one super handy feature is, through one line of Python, you can get the definitions for all of your measures,
Oh, nice.
right? So
Yeah.
think about how, and then you can output that. Maybe you put that in a lake house, and then maybe you run that every day. So there's always an updated kind of data dictionary for your measure logic, for example.
Yeah, I could see that. One use case I saw, and I'm hoping I'm getting it right, but Kurt Bueller had a blog post about what if you don't have access to the Power BI, the PBIX file anymore? How can you
Hmm.
recreate it? And there's, I think, a lot of involved semantic link kind of pulling that data out and sort of doing a heart transplant in like a PBIR file or something like that. I forget, but um,
Yeah.
yeah,
You can
I'm surprised.
create a model. So it's
Yeah,
not read only either. So you can actually make changes with it.
that's exciting. I mean, just to have a programmatic interface, I'm surprised it's automatically included because the impression I got was this was one of Michael Kowalski's like 50 third-party projects.
Okay, so that's Semantic Link Labs. So that's
Okay,
step
okay.
2. So Semantic Link is not
This is why I'm
is
having you on,
included.
because in my
Yeah,
head, it's just I hear semantics and I'm like, "It's something Python." So, okay. So go
right.
ahead and
So there's
tell us what, like,
2.
labs
Yeah,
is. Yeah, explain the
okay,
2.
good, yeah. Semantic Link, that's pre-installed. Semantic Link Labs, this is
Okay,
Michael Kowalski's thing,
got
and
it.
you do have to do the pip install for that, or
Okay.
you can install it as an environment as well. And that's just, like, kinda next level, and
Okay.
it's an open source community project, and his GitHub the GitHub page for Semantic Link Labs, it has this is where these sample notebooks are that are
Oh,
incredibly
awesome,
helpful
yeah. I
to
was gonna
learn
ask if it
how
was,
to
like, in
use
one
it.
place because, like, you're like,
Yeah,
there's a lot of resources, but, like, if it's 50 different websites, it gets to be a little difficult, so that's
yeah,
really nice.
for sure. So, his GitHub page, and then also Sandeep Power, he has fabric.guru, and
Sandeep is great. He's a great
yes,
guy.
he's great, and he has posted a lot of super helpful stuff too. So those are my 2 go-to places for learning about
Yeah,
Semantic Link and Semantic Link Labs.
yeah, I think Sandeep would be, mad if I didn't mention, if you're messing around with Spark, there's also, they renamed it. I think it was like MS Spark Utils, and now it's Notebook Utils, but he's written some great stuff on that, and there's not a huge amount of documentation, but that came up when I was doing some benchmarking for moving CSV files into Fabric, and, he was one of the few people that had, like, a post on fast copy and all that stuff. So, yeah, he's just killing it. Anything with Fabric and notebooks, Sandeep's got a lot of great stuff.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that's interesting. So for people who don't know the name Michael Kowalski, he's come up a lot for me because I've been trying to do performance tuning stuff. And so he's written 2 sets of best practice analyzers. So he's written the DAX model or whatever you call it, semantic model best practices rules. And so you can run those in Tabular Studio or Tabulator, sorry. There may be some other places. I think I saw with Link Labs, you can run them as well on your environment, which is
Exactly. Yep.
exciting. Because like some stuff you're not gonna let me let me mute this. Dude. Some stuff you're not gonna care about, right? Like, okay, we don't have our primary keys marked as is key. That probably doesn't matter. But for certain things like auto date time or just bidirectional relationships, many relationships, you really want to be catching that and make sure that it's being done for a good reason. So he has that, which is great. because that can help improve performance in just the clinician model. But then he also wrote the report analyzer, which is kind of this wind form sort of application. But you can then point it to a performance analyzer extract. You can point it to your Power BI file, and it'll run 8 best practices for the report layer, and it'll highlight which stuff was slow. So that's how I know him, is he's doing all this stuff in the performance and best practices space. So I don't know how he quite sleeps apparently, but he works for
Yeah, really.
Microsoft and he's just doing all this stuff in his spare time, I assume. So
And
it's
he
wild.
put those things into Semantic Link Labs. So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can run those, in a notebook now, so you can
yeah.
have a notebook set up and so you can kind of automate all of this. The other
Yeah.
thing he also put in there that I love is going to end up making my old field finder utility obsolete.
Okay.
Because he's got that built in too. So my field finder tool, it runs locally. So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you don't have your reports, all the reports that are pointing to a semantic model locally, it's not going to be able to tell you what's not used. But his in Semantic Link Labs, it can go through and it can check all of the reports, the thin reports that are pointing to a semantic model, and then spit out what's unused. So
Yeah.
it's a really cool feature.
That's nice. I've recommended your tool a couple times because I don't know if you've ever run into this problem, but you know, a couple times I've been on really big Excel lift and shifts to Power BI. And if you're not really diligent at the beginning and just pull in exactly what you need, what ends up happening is you bring in a lot of stuff, you test out a bunch of logic, and then the customer's like, well, we don't actually care about that measure. We had it in Excel. We said to duplicate it precisely, but no one uses it. And so the tedium of going back through after you get rid of the visuals and be like, well, do I still need this? Is it used anywhere? Is really frustrating. So it's great to see that. um, I've done some consulting for TrueViz, and they're looking to work in that space too with their Power Ops to be able to say, okay, what stuff is unused. But I like stuff that you can automate because their stuff looks like your thing, file by file. And um, I think that brings us to some of the governance kind of stuff. So um, I'm confident you've way more Fabric experience than me because I did like 1 day of training for a customer, and I've played around, but I haven't had any customer projects. And the impression I get is governance in Fabric is like going to Lowe's or Home Depot. They're like, here's the lumber, here's the nails, but go build it. Like I've looked at the Fabric metrics app and it's 2 weeks of data and there's only so much stuff you can get out. And it really seems like if you want to manage and govern Fabric well, you're gonna need to start learning to write notebooks. Is that kind of been your experience?
I guess it
You can
depends,
say
right?
no. Yeah, I know, that's the IT response. Well, no, that's fair.
Yeah. It depends on, I don't know, the size of your organization and your policies, how many people. I think if you can get comfortable with notebooks, you'll have a real advantage.
Yeah.
And, especially again with Python, I don't know it, but ChatGPT sure has been helpful for me for that. Um,
It's very good on Python for a couple reasons in my opinion. So, LLMs are good whenever there's a large corpus of high quality text, and there's a lot of GitHub projects and things written in Python. There's not a lot of DAX and M code floating around, so you have that, but then also, I pay for ChatGPT, I think Plus, and it'll actually generate and run Python code, and so I wouldn't be surprised if behind the scenes they did a lot of optimization and training to get it to be good at Python. Um, the only thing I've run into issues with is it doesn't know much about Fabric yet,
mm.
and Fabric's changing a lot right now because the last training date, I wanna say was, like, October of last year? I don't know, I forget, you can ask it. So whenever I was trying to do that benchmarking thing, I'd be like, "Well, how do I do this?" And it would think it knew, and I'd be like, "That doesn't sound right." And then I'd say, "Research this," and then it would Google a bunch of stuff and give me a different answer. So that's I agree, it's really good at Python. You just be a little wary about anything that's fresh, like Fabric stuff, you know? but it'll do
Yeah.
searches if you tell it to.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it can be real helpful.
Yeah.
I'm intimidated by, learning Python, but I think with ChatGPT and then the motivation of how much I think it is helpful with Fabric, I definitely recommend it.
Well, and I hope Microsoft continues to expand the accessibility because like the data wrangler feature seems really
Mhm.
exciting. Like basically Power Query for Python. I think that could be really cool. They also have a snippets library that I hope they kind of continue to expand and organize and stuff. When you make a notebook on a lake house, you can pull in some snippets. Unfortunately, I needed like baby's first snippet because I was trying to figure out how to like read CSV files and then save it to Parquet and stuff for like the next benchmarking post. So I'm not quite there yet, but um, I think there's a lot Microsoft can do to make the notebook stuff more approachable for us who like the last time I had to do anything with Python, I was writing video games in high school. So it's been a minute.
Nice. And that
Yeah.
just made me think about how remember when they brought in R to Power BI, and we were
Oh
all
yeah.
excited, and then they brought Python, and I mean, who's talking about R anymore in Power
I
BI?
know. Well, I remember for our user group, I did like a presentation on our visuals and stuff, and yeah,
Mhm.
Python has definitely won the war, in my opinion. I mean, I think there's still people doing stuff with R. It still certainly exists, but Python's such a wonderful glue language. And you mentioned ChatGPT because Python is so English-like, so natural language. I think that it's going to continue to do really, really well because, like, I think it's practically like writing pseudocode when you're writing Python. Um, I mean, the only thing I hear people complain about is they don't like significant white space. I'm fine with it. I don't miss semicolons, but so yeah, that's
I
really
guess
cool.
it's just another thing to get used to.
Well, it's rough. Like I mean, let's have an elegy for the Power BI dev. We had to learn like 3 or 4 different languages just to do our job. 'Cause you're you have to know SQL, you have to know M and Power Query, you have to know DAX, and now Microsoft is like, "So, by the way, folks, let's learn some Python, let's maybe a little bit of Spark." It's like,
Mhm.
we really have to be polyglots, and I don't envy anyone. I do appreciate they do seem to be making an effort to make things approachable. So when I was trying to figure out Fabric, there's an old SNL skit, I don't know if you ever heard of it, called Shimmer, but Fabric has the shimmer problem where it's like, it's a dessert topping and it's a floor wax. Like, that's how I feel about Fabric sometimes, it's trying to be all these things. Um, and so when I was trying to figure out, well, what is Fabric? I got really excited when I saw Gen 2 data flows and when I saw visual SQL queries. Because the SQL's butt ugly because Power Query is writing it, but I know that kinda ugly. And so, like, I see the moonshot of how do we get Chris in accounting to be working with lake houses? It's still a little ambitious, but I mean, if nothing else, Microsoft has learned how to make stuff approachable to the business user. So I hope they nail it. But yeah, I don't want to have to know 5 different programming languages, please.
Yeah, I know, but you're how do we get away from that? I don't
I
know.
I don't yeah, I don't I think we're just out of luck until, like my dream is they find a way to, like, integrate Power Query and Data Wrangler and just make some way to, like we can start in Power Query and then turn it into a notebook or something. That's my dream, but I don't think it's happening, so
Make it happen. You can make it happen,
I
Eugene.
guess I could start, like, a volunteer project, but
Mhm.
got other stuff going on.
Do ya? Oh.
Um, so anything else that you've used Link Labs for, or has it just been more experimentation at this point? Or Semantic Link in
Um,
general, I guess?
I think just, like, documentation because, it will run through all the workspaces and tell me what's in them and, what semantic models they're using, and that's just really nice. It's a nice wrapper on the API, so I don't have to deal with the API.
Oh,
I
nice.
think I would rather use Python, um, because I don't know why, but somehow the learning curve has not been huge, which has been
It's not
lovely, and I
bad,
think
no, it's not
no,
bad. Like, I
yeah,
would I would so much rather learn Python than, like, Timsel and Timdal and any of
mhm.
the, like, XMLA, like, please no.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, and then, yeah, he just put such a nice wrapper around everything, it makes it really easy.
So we talked about the whole it depends thing in scale. Do you think that this is a useful tool for, I don't know, let's say you have 25 Power BI users and you started using Fabric because you want some of the features and stuff. Do you think like at a smaller scale it's still useful, or is it something where like you've got 100 people on Power BI Pro or something, or just
Oh,
play
I
with it?
think it's still useful. I do think
Okay.
it's still useful, right? Because I mean, everybody wants us to document everything,
Yes.
um, right? And we never want to. It's a pain. But this is one of the things Semantic Link Labs can do really, or and Semantic Link can do really well.
Do you know if it can write back like descriptions or comments or anything? Because that would be a killer feature for the documentation part.
I think it can actually, because I was just looking at what are some features that it can do to see what was different, and I think
We'll
it
put it in
can
the show
even
notes, because
okay.
because Darren Gospel had an interesting blog post, like, a year ago about using ChatGPT to auto document your measures. Like, "Here's the
Yeah.
code, describe what it does." And
Uh-huh.
so, I think there's plenty of cases where that could be really, really useful.
Yeah. Yep, and I do believe you can do that in Semantic Link Labs with Semantic Link Labs.
Cool. So, we'll have a bunch of links to all this stuff. I'm excited. I need to learn it, but every time I've seen someone talk about these toolings, they seem really excited. So
Yeah.
let's kind of wrap up. So one of the questions we always ask, what is your favorite Fabric feature?
Oh, that was it. It was Semantic Link,
Okay,
for
cool.
sure.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. But
Yeah.
other than that one, we briefly talked about data flows Gen 2
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
being able to have a destination for data flows Gen 2, I love. So,
Oh,
you do all
sure.
your transformation in Power Query, and again, that data gets locked away into your semantic model. But if you instead save it, okay, not technically anymore because you can store your semantic model data in one
You
lake
you
now.
can turn on the integration, yeah. But
Yeah,
even
so you
then,
could do that.
like the fact that you can put it in a lake house, or I forget if SQL's an endpoint. I think it might be, but because I used to be a DBA, a SQL Server DBA, and I always wish that instead of having the import wizard be in SSIS, we had an import wizard for like Power Query. Because anytime your data is like in JSON or XML and it's all nested, it's such a pain. But if you use Power Query, it's buttery smooth. Um, so yeah, I agree. I have complained about the data connection management just because sometimes I get confused, like keeping track of all the data connections. I don't know where they're stored in Fabric, but that may be more a me problem. I don't know. But yeah, I Power Query is my favorite data transformation tool because if you need to scale, you can write a notebook later. Or if you need to make it more robust, you can add in stuff later. But just to get stuff done, you can have something working in 30 minutes, an hour, or
Like,
whatever.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I love it.
So what is your least favorite Fabric feature?
Okay, well, I'm gonna make this like a happy sad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
I do like that the F SKUs, have a much lower entry point
Yes.
cost of
Yeah.
entry. So, you can get an F2. We didn't have that with Power BI Premium. A P1 was 5,000 a month.
Yeah.
So it's much cheaper. But what just breaks my heart, really bums me out that Microsoft did, and I think it has to do with, an FSKU is a Fabric, it's an Azure thing, it's not a
Right. They live in different worlds. Like
they
even the
live in
fact
different
that
worlds.
yeah.
Yeah, so, what bums me out is that for the P SKUs, there used to be significant nonprofit discounts. They were
Yep.
great, and I worked at a nonprofit. That's why we
Yep.
went with Power BI,
Yeah,
because the
exactly.
discount was fantastic. FSKU, no nonprofit discount. So I'm really disappointed about
Yeah,
that.
pricing is a bit of a gut punch right now because they're deprecating the P1 SKU, the P SKUs entirely. But then in April, they're doing that price increase for the shared capacity licenses.
Mhm,
And, I'm not a licensing guru, but I really wish they would have made that announcement at the same time and maybe given a little bit more planning runway for people because I think there are
mhm,
people that were like, okay, we're going to do Fabric, we're ready. And then you've got a 40% price increase on Pro. And then you've got the thing you mentioned. So if you were a nonprofit or education or whatever, you're seeing an effective price increase. And
Well,
yeah,
they
one of the
do I
weird
think the pro licenses are still discounted. It's just the
Oh, are
premium
they for
SKUs.
okay, fair.
Y
The list
yeah.
price on Pro is going up. I know that.
Yes.
Uh, but I didn't know about the nonprofit. That's fair. So the list price for Pro is going from 10 to 14. The list price for premium per user, I think, is going from 20 to 24.
I
And
mean, they
then,
haven't
yeah, you
updated in like, forever, right?
oh,
These
yeah,
were
no,
the
no, like,
starting prices, so I'm not too mad about that part.
I'm in the same boat, right? Like, I think it's a well-deserved price increase. I think just some some more lead up, especially if you're doing this other big licensing change, would have been
Yeah,
helpful for folks. But I
yeah,
agree, like, my personal opinion is if you were getting value out of Power BI Pro in, like, the 2016 to 2018 era where it was just super janky, it is way more than 40% better than it was back then, is my
for
personal
sure.
opinion. So, I mean, I get why people are frustrated, but I can't blame Microsoft. I just think I feel like there's a small subset of people that had certain expectations of what Fabric was gonna cost and what their current thing was gonna cost, and they're just getting stuck in the middle. So, I do feel bad for them.
Yeah, that
But
part's
yeah,
not easy.
yeah. So, where can people find you? There's unfortunately like 12 different social media networks. Some are getting banned, all this kind of stuff. So, where can people find you these days?
Yeah. Mostly I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I keep thinking I should start getting more active on Blue Sky, but I haven't done it yet. If I get the right level of motivation, I'll be there, but I'm not.
Yeah. 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 It seems to
And
be
then
popping off for sure. But
yeah,
but you got to decide how much time you want to invest in a time sink like that.
yeah.
Um, you know. And then
Um,
so
Also, we have
anything you
a
want to promote?
blog. Yeah,
Yeah.
data-witches.com. So that's, the website and blog,
Oh,
um,
very nice.
for
Cool.
our new venture, starting off as my new venture, but
Yep. Yep.
that's, it
The
will be
data witch.
plural.
Yeah, and then maybe
Yeah,
you'll have a coven eventually.
exactly. Looking forward to a coven. Currently, there's one, but, I'm optimistic that there will be a
Cool.
coven.
Have you picked a niche or anything you're kinda specializing in yet, or you still gotta feel that out?
Um, well, I did spend a lot of time in nonprofit,
Oh,
and
that's a
I
good
kind of
point. Yeah. I think
yeah,
I
and
I think a vertical niche can be really, really valuable because, like, just having someone who understands the shape of the data, and in your case, nonprofits, like, I volunteer for a local women's center, and I get to hear from the CEO just all of the grant writing and all the stuff that she has to deal with, and so there's a whole world of hoops that they have to jump through that you don't with normal corporate, for sure. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So yeah, with all that experience and, I enjoy working with nonprofits. It feeds my soul. So,
Yeah.
being able to work with people who are dedicated to doing something good
Mission
and then
driven. Yeah.
yeah,
W
and then
it's
making their lives easier, that makes me happy.
yeah, no, I totally understand because, like, for a while, you were getting paid in warm fuzzies, and
Yeah.
then at Microsoft and then you're getting paid in dollars, and now you're like, "Can I have a blend? Can I have, like, a
Yeah,
mix?" I totally
exactly.
get that. No, I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
Very cool. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on, Steph, and I wish you a lot of luck, and we'll have a link to Data Witches and all your stuff going on in the show notes. So thank you, everyone.
Super. Thanks for having me on.